a fractional,
Sorry
got it.
about that.
All good. On a fractional or a contractual basis. So I'm not full time with any of the firms that I'm working with on the fractional side of the house, but I'm able to offer support as well as oversight of vendors, in-house resources, and then really just be relied upon to develop strategy, identify the channels and the tactics that we're going to kind of deploy to ensure that we're meeting not only our marketing goals, but the business goals and objectives.
So we're here today to talk about building a marketing ecosystem for a law firm, and that means a lot of things. But what do you mean when you say that or think about that?
Well, when I think about the marketing ecosystem, I'm thinking about the partners, the tools, the processes, everything that basically you're putting together to help reach the marketing outcome that you want to achieve. So whether that's identifying your infrastructure to get reporting in place, everything from intake and sales and tracking and reporting to ensuring that you've got a diversified marketing portfolio across multiple channels, whether it's digital, whether it's offline, and then the people, the processes that you've got in order to make all of these things run, they've all got to be cohesive. The left hand needs to know what the right is doing. You want to make sure that your messaging and positioning is in alignment across different channels. So if you've got multiple vendors, right? You don't want one saying that you offer a free consult in an ad and then someone else on social saying that you don't offer a free consultation, or depending upon what different slogans or taglines are. You just want to make sure that those are consistent so you've got a unified brand presence across every opportunity and every channel that you're trying to present yourself as the leading choice for a consumer to select you as a firm. So I just take a look at all the pieces that are combined that are working towards that common goal. Yes, I'm going to be talking today about marketing, but that all still needs to be tied to the overall business's goals and objectives.
Okay, so I know your clients span different practice areas of lawyers. I know we've got a wide range on this webinar here, from sort of PI to business to employment to divorce, family, to all the above. And so what works for one group may not be appropriate for the other, but we're going to try to, speak to all of them. But I want to go back. So the first thing I have a question about, and you hear a lot about, is how much should you spend on marketing? And, there quote these rules of thumb that are out there. I don't know if it's 10% or 12% or 15% of revenue or whatever. When you think about how much should a firm be spending, what's your thoughts on that?
If I had to give just a blanket response without knowing any of the nuances, the competitive landscape, how much you want to grow, and other dynamics like how far along you are in building the firm, the ones that are relatively growth minded are investing anywhere between 15 and 25% of annual revenue. And that number is, allocated across different channels depending upon where your ideal consumers and clients are going to be found. Now, for a personal injury firm in a highly competitive market, a major metro that wants to grow aggressively, and they have, multi-dozen case kind of benchmarks or 100 plus case per, month, like that's, you're going to have to invest on the much higher end in order to produce that type of lead volume. And then depending upon, again, your conversion rate and how quickly you are signing up these cases and you can service those clients appropriately, it's all going to come into play. Maybe an estate planning firm or more like real estate firm, some of those practice areas don't have to market as aggressively. But it is very dependent upon how much you in fact want to grow. And that's going to vary by every single firm, always.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if you're a personal injury firm and you're investing heavily in digital billboards and all that stuff, ads, I mean, you can spend that money quick. I mean, you can get to the 25 easy, I'm sure. But for some of the other firms that are more, I'll call them business oriented or relationship oriented, like my own, I've looked at the numbers and I'm like, how could I even get to 15 or 25%? You really got to stretch. At least I feel like that. So, I don't know if I think probably it does depend on the type of firm. And maybe that's a good segue. So lots of things in marketing work,
Yeah.
ads, relationships, handwritten notes, whatever you say it. Lots of things work. And so for a smaller firm owner who's thinking about what do I do first or how do I approach it, what's your approach? What would you tell them?
Smaller firm, and if they are just getting started, maybe under 5 years experience, right? They're going to have a lot more time than they are money to invest into marketing channels. So the time is, yes, it is money, but I would be doing things more like traditional business development and networking, continuing to market to your current and previous clients so that you can generate additional referrals. You could do that through newsletters. You can, like you said, write handwritten notes. You can have a print newsletter. You could also attend industry events and conferences and essentially develop a network of individuals that maybe don't do exactly what it is that you do or don't do what you do at all that can start to refer you business. You can also do something like I do and as well as you do. We produce content on digital platforms, organic content on things like LinkedIn. You're probably going to cut up this video and make it into shorts or reels and post it on your YouTube channel or somewhere else, right? We are spending our time to do this and produce what we hope is valuable for an audience, but you can take that time and put it into channels where you believe people are going to find it. Ideally, clients.
All right, well, let's talk about some digital, and everybody out there, if you have questions, just start sending them in. We'll cut whatever question you want. Let's get it in so we can get it answered. But let's talk about digital, and in digital that means a lot of things. But let's talk social media, because I know we both do that. And so, a lot of lawyers I talk to, they're like, I'm going to hire somebody to manage my social media. And you got the different social media channels that have different personalities and maybe could be managed by somebody else more effectively than other channels. But at least on LinkedIn and maybe some of these others, Twitter, when I'm on there, if it's not the actual lawyer posting it, it comes across to me, it seems to be bland and not very effective. So people out there that say, hey, I'm going to hire somebody to manage my social media, what advice would you have in that regard? Hand it over completely? Take some control, some combination of both?
Take a very extreme approach, and I'll say most likely avoid it at all costs. But if you're a little bit more established and you understand exactly what you want that person to do and you've scoped it out, like that person can be responsible for actually hitting publish. If you've written the content and you've given the individuals that you want to have tagged, or maybe they can help you develop and create the creative if you've got an image, or if you've got video post-production support because you did some sort of live event and you want them to chop it up and segment certain clips and then go and load it into a tool that can schedule posts out for you, someone to manage that administrative burden, like the marketing operations side of the house. I'm all for that and support it fully. And I've got resources in place to help me do that too. Personally, I found that if you let somebody else manage that entire process, you don't really know what it takes in order to write something or put something together that's going to resonate, with your audience. I had to go through a lot of trial and error, a lot of posts that got 10 impressions, no likes, no comments, to figure out what's going to hit. And as the attorney, the subject matter expert with all this experience and expertise, to delegate that to someone that has no legal experience, isn't involved in talking to your ideal client whatsoever, and give them the responsibility to create this content on your behalf, I just think you're setting yourself up for failure. I'm not saying it can't work once you've gotten to a certain point, but whether that's you writing the newsletter and then having them make it into short form content for something like Twitter or LinkedIn, I do believe that you should be involved in that process so that you understand what it is that you eventually would want this individual to overtake entirely.
Well, I'm not going to get into an ethical discussion, but that's another issue too. It's a lot of times these non-lawyers are publishing things that violate the ethics rules. So that'd be something to be careful on there too. So let's move on here a little bit. So you've got all these different channels you can pursue. and a law firm owner or a lawyer decides, hey, I'm going to try this new channel. How do you figure out, you know, is it working? How long do you let it run? How do you measure the ROI? How do you make the decision once you've decided to go down the path? Do you cut bait and move on? How long do you typically advise your clients to give a new channel or a new campaign or a new project to see if it works?
I'll tackle a couple channels, and we already have a question here. I'll try to rope this into my response, Omar. So let's take ads, paid search. So Google Ads, Microsoft Ads. You're paying for somebody to click on your ad to drive them to a landing page and convert into a client. You're going to have to give that at least 3 to 6 months, preferably 6 to 9 months, in order to determine whether or not that is a successful campaign or not. And the reason why is, if you've never invested in Google Ads, this is a new channel for you, right? Google's in the business of maximizing revenue per impression. And if they don't know that you can drive revenue for their firm and get them that click that puts money in their pocket, they're not going to want to show your ad for some time. So for the first 4 weeks or so, as long as you've got a reputable agency, or if you're managing it yourself, you've got great ad copy, you've got a good landing page, you've got calls to actions, right? Like you're driving someone down the funnel in order to convert. Within those first 4 weeks, Google's just testing the waters with you. They're starting to throw you some impressions, and then maybe they'll give you some clicks, as long as those things are in place. And then weeks 4 through 8, those impressions start to turn into more clicks, and those clicks start to become some contacts. And then again, 8 through 12, those contacts start to become consultations, and hopefully they become opportunities for you to consider. But for those first 3 months, you paid a boatload of money to Google Ads. You paid the agency to then have an ad management fee. You maybe paid somebody else to develop a landing page, right? Like, you're in the red, right? Like the economics here are not going to work in your favor. Your average cost per lead, your acquisition costs, your cost per action are all going to be through the roof. So you've got to give it a little bit of time for that to kind of course correct. And between months 3 through 6, now you start pulling some levers. You see which ad copy is working, which landing page is converting better, and which keywords are actually driving the qualified opportunities that you're looking to capture. In the meanwhile, you're doing things like adding negative keywords so that you're not wasting money on clicks that aren't driving, right, the qualified contacts that you want. So again, thinking about and putting all of that into consideration, that's why I say with something like paid search and Google Ads, you got to give it 6 to 9 months. My thoughts are...
Real quick, and maybe this is Omar's question, but so the first thing you got to do sounds like you can't dabble. You got to commit to some substantial period of time, which is a substantial investment. So so that's step one. So let's say you're going to go down a PPC route or some sort of LSA, whatever, paid advertising. How do you figure out who to hire to help you do that, or do you do it in-house?
I would not recommend that you start off in-house, because it's very easy to waste a lot of money. You just don't have the time to become an expert in that type of platform. It also depends on like how much you're investing, right? If you're a personal injury firm that's going to invest 100, 200 plus $1,000 per month, you likely can afford to hire somebody in-house to manage that on your behalf, because it doesn't make sense, because your ad management fee to the agency is going to be exorbitant at that point. You can afford a body to put in place. Listen, I think when you are looking at vendors and evaluating vendors, the first thing that you have to do is really find cultural and value alignment and fit, right? I think you talk to a handful of them, you get their insights and their recommendations around, what should my budget be? Do I have access to my accounts? Can I see all of my data? Do you own my account? Are you running things on a proprietary platform, right? What happens if we do untethered? Do I get all of this? Do I get the landing page? Like, what do I own and what do you own? Just get very clear on those things before you sign on the dotted line and make a decision about which one to go. And when you talk to a handful or a half dozen of agencies, there's going to be a few of them that are going to have pretty similar recommendations. And then there's going to be one that's just trying to get your business, telling you to underinvest so that they can get you as a client. And then there might be someone that's whale hunting, right? That's really just trying to get you for a big deal. I mean, lawyers are good at reading people, and I think you can kind of see through some of that BS. Talk talk to other people as well, for their insights, and balance all of that together. But don't make your decision based off of somebody else's success, because you might not know all the other things they have going on to make that campaign as successful as it might have been.
So let's talk SEO real quick. Excuse me. You know, at least in the law firm space, there might be two or three or maybe five that really, really high end, reputable agencies that help on that kind of stuff that are uber expensive. Not everybody can hire them. So the people who cannot hire them, you know, how do you go about figuring out who can help you on SEO? You know, I hear the story over and over. You hire somebody that they do a really good job in the early days, and then it falls apart for whatever, it goes sideways, and then you're moving on to the next one. And it seems like you're starting over. I'm sure you've heard that over and over. So for some of the smaller firms that don't have the big spend, how would you go about figuring out who to help you on SEO, if that's even something they should consider?
Listen, there's some big players. I got no problem, calling them out. You've got Hennessy, Blue Shark, Rankings, Law Rank, iLawyer, right? These are the ones that are mostly playing in the PI markets. And because of that practice area's saturation and level of competitiveness, it and how far you are along in your SEO journey, it may require a significant investment, and you've got to be aggressive. If you're just starting out, like, there are plenty of smaller boutique legal marketing agencies that are going to give you a little bit more of the TLC. They're going to have more opportunities to speak with their team. They might not have as deep of a roster of subject matter experts, within each individual channel. But if they are offering, kind of holistic marketing or agency of record type of services, and do most of everything, when I say everything, SEO, ads, website development, and design, you know, you can definitely have success, especially in, even in personal injury, depending upon your market. So, I think that when you're looking at SEO, it's unlike how it is compared to ads. It is a much longer term type of investment. And I think where you talked about, like, the honeymoon phase, right, where everything is great, it's all amazing, and then things kind of fall to the wayside. I think the reason why that happens is because upfront and initially, the expectation around accountabilities and how you define success were not clearly articulated. If you have something in place like, we are looking to capture X amount of leads at this cost, or this is what we are willing to pay to acquire clients, or at the end of the day, these are the outcomes that we want, month over month, quarter over quarter, if you're not achieving those outcomes, it's very simple to point out that we're missing the mark here. Now, it could be either side. The firm has a responsibility to provide feedback and be accountable for approvals to keep things moving. And the agency's also got the responsibility to ensure that they're getting what they need from you, and setting and resetting expectations. So it's a two-way street when it comes to that.
All right, we got another question here from Matt Stevens. I think I'm reading this correctly. So, our managing partner associates aggressive marketing with call centers or large VA teams. Is that a necessary correlation?
No, no, Matt. I think that you would agree with that as well. Like, if you are aggressively marketing, it doesn't just mean that you are spending, 6+ figures on ads, or 5 figures a month plus on SEO. It could mean a lot of other different things. You've got lawyers that are very pointed towards business development and building relationships and driving referral marketing, and that could funnel into a newsletter. Like, I would consider that an aggressive play also, just because it's a lot of time. Like, the lawyers at the firm are expensive. They are expensive headcount. And when they are doing those things, right, they are trying to build for the future of the firm, to bring in business a different way. So I wouldn't say that is a necessary correlation.
All right, so let me ask this. So ROI, that's a question I'm sure you get a lot. How am I going to track the ROI on this specific thing? Some of them are very easy. I mean, you can, put a tracking code or a QR, or a special phone number on certain types of things, and that's pretty easy. But a lot of marketing efforts that we do, it's really hard to track. So what would you say to the lawyers out there saying, what's the ROI? Is that the right question, or maybe is there a different way to measure it or go after that?
I try to balance this response with the fact that I have a real appreciation and love technology and data and looking at the reports to see where things are coming from and how I can attribute them to specific campaigns. But a lot of times this really does muddy the waters because it's like it takes out all the creativity from marketing. But like you know when it's working because the leads are coming in and you're converting more clients. Now, that's an easy way out. In order to track it as accurately as you possibly can, you've got to have a couple of tools in place. And I think firms miss out on collecting both quantitative and qualitative data. And I'll explain. Think about like the softwares like dynamic call tracking. You've got CallRail or What Converts. These are things that will allow you to assign tracking numbers to individual campaigns or profiles or channels so that if that number is called, you can source it back as what captured the demand, right? Like if someone reaches out to me after listening to this webinar, but they just go to LegalFenix.com, right? My HubSpot reporting is going to tell me that that was a direct lead. But if I also ask them, how did you hear about me? They might say, you were on Jonathan Hawkins' webinar, right? So I know both the qualitative and the quantitative. They heard about me. What generated the demand was this session. And what captured it ultimately was somebody went to my website and they were convinced enough to contact me. Now, you could take it a step further, which I do. I just talked about HubSpot or a sales CRM. Firms can take that call tracking software and use that tool to push what's known as source attribution data, your source data. Where did they come from? Into an intake management software or a CRM. So think about your Clio Grows, your lead dockets, you know, HubSpot, Lawmatics, things like that. So that once that contact record is created, the data from CallRail or What Converts gets pushed into it, and now you can understand which channel they came into. And then you can set up all different sorts of reporting, Jonathan, right? Like within those tools, they allow you to say how many leads came in. And then from there, if you're creating opportunities or deals in your CRM, you could say, well, how many deals were then a result from those channels? You could associate dollar amounts. It gets tricky because some firm like family where you have like retainer replenishments, to try to figure out like multiple replenishments and then lifetime value. Like you can get creative with that stuff, but it is possible. I just try to make sure that firms don't become so obsessed with getting like 100% one-to-one perfect attribution because it doesn't really exist.
So when law firms work with you, it sounds to be, you know, you're never going to get perfect attribution, but the numbers matter. The data matters. I mean, that's what drives informed decisions, right? So if you're not tracking the data or you're tracking the wrong data, you might just be burning money, time, energy, money, all of that, right?
Mhm. Yeah, there's some platforms that auto like Google local services ads. They're tracking all of those leads. They tell you how much money you've spent, how many total leads are generated. They'll tell you what your average cost per lead is. And then if you know that you retain that client, you can then back out your acquisition costs. Or I know that there's some firms on here that have like very well set up instances of Lawmatics and HubSpot where they see that in their reporting by channel, ads, LSA locations, and things like that. And it is a great data point to make better decisions as to where we want to double down spend, where we need to optimize, or where we need to reallocate completely.
So before I move on, so everybody out there, put in your questions. If you are considering a very specific marketing approach, put it in here. You've got Ron here who can give you his opinion. So put it in here. Let's see another one. Do you see that question there? So understanding ROI can be muddy, where firms have internal and external partners collaborating. Would it make sense to simplify lines of responsibility so it's easier to evaluate the performance of channels and campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have clear boundary set of scope and accountabilities for each of that, but is it easier to evaluate the performance of channels and campaigns? I mean, ideally, both internal and external partners are working together and rowing in the same direction, right? And when they don't necessarily have open lines of communication to each other, someone like yourself, Matt, or someone in my position can bridge the gap to ensure that the left hand knows what the right is doing. So Yeah, like there could be some muddied waters because, you know, partner A has a different reporting infrastructure than partner B, and maybe partner B doesn't have access to the data that partner C has. But if you have someone in there that's trying to centralize all of that reporting into, you know, one source of truth, I think that's how you can find more success in identifying which channels are working a little bit better.
All right, we got another question. It's about LinkedIn. I'll give my answer, then I'll hand it over to you, Ron. So, is LinkedIn an effective way to attract business clients who are willing to pay high hourly fees? Short answer, yes. If you do it right. If you do it right and you do it well, yes, that's my opinion. It's happened for me. I know others that it's happened for, but you got to do it effectively. So, yay, I'm a super lawyer. Look at me, or those kind of posts are not going to work at all. The other piece I would say is it needs to be tied to an individual lawyer as opposed to a company page, in my opinion. I think people, as a consumer on LinkedIn, I don't really look at company posts. They get muted. LinkedIn doesn't really promote them. So if you're going to do LinkedIn, it should be really a personal approach versus a company approach. And your posts need to be good. What does that mean? I don't know. That could be like a whole 2-hour presentation on that, which I actually give that presentation. So, if anybody ever wants me to give that presentation, I will. So Ron, what do you think about, I know you're active on LinkedIn too. What are your thoughts?
So you opened up, one of the first questions was talking about delegating marketing to like an intern or a marketing coordinator. It's not going to work if you do it that way. Yeah, I think you could be very successful. LinkedIn is a platform filled of other business professionals. They may not all be active or jumping into the conversation, but they are lurking. They are reading. They are consuming and sharing that information. And I would say most people that have contacted me that told me they found me on LinkedIn, I'm not connected with. They never commented on any of my posts. There are certainly some that will slide into the DMs and say, hey, like I read this, or like I'd like to talk to you, or learn more about what you do. But I do think that if you do put the effort forth and provide some value and insight to your particular buyer or client, that it can be a very successful platform. It's just, it takes time. I've been doing it for 4 years. So
And I'll say, I'll get into some more details. So, for a while there, I posted every day. I think no more than every day. Every day is a lot, but no more than that. I think, maybe 3, 4 times a week is probably pretty good. No more than once in a day in that period, even if you do it 4 times a week. Um, and the other thing I'll say is it's helped me both locally and sort of beyond local. It's created a bunch of contacts across the country. But the other thing I'll say is, I've been posting for, like I said, for a few years now, and I'll bump into lawyers here in Atlanta that have never interacted with any of my posts. They've never given it a like. They've never made a comment. I have no evidence they've ever seen it. And then they tell me when I bump into them in town, hey, I like what you're doing on LinkedIn. So I think it can help you meet new people. It helps reinforce you with your referral sources, with your business clients. And then, it will increase your exposure even locally, even though it feels like is pushing all over the world. So, new question here. Do you have any recommendations for firms that have no lead/contract tracking software but would like to start?
the most affordable would be something where you can use CallRail or What Converts, the call tracking software, as like a poor man's CRM, if you will. You can thumbs up, thumbs down leads. You can see where they're coming from. It gives you some basic reporting. If you've got some money for investment, like I'm a big fan of HubSpot. I think LawMatics is a great platform. Depending upon your practice area, like Lead Docket would be an option. Again, depending upon your practice area, there are others that are out there. It really depends on like the entire need of the tool. And if like outside of leads, you're looking to manage like a newsletter or segmenting lists or things like that, where I would probably go in different directions. We could talk about CRM for an entire call.
Oh yeah, and I'll just say, so I'm looking for a CRM. Ron, you know this. We've talked about it at length. But I've been tracking. I've just been using a spreadsheet for years, and I just put it in there. I have certain things that I try to capture. Uh, I may miss some. It doesn't capture all the data, and there's reporting I can't do. But at least it's something, and it's there, so I can figure out sort of where my leads are coming from. So if nothing else, you've got Excel or some sort of Google sheet, put it in there. Okay.
I think we got another one here.
Did you land on once a day LinkedIn posting through trial and error, or was it widely tested best practice? Okay. So when I first started, I won't go into my, how I got into it. It's a long story, but I started doing 3 days a week because I figured I can do that. I mean, for me, part of it is I feel like if you're going to try something, you need to be consistent. And so I wanted to make a commitment that I thought I could meet. So I said 3 days a week. I just did Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then after a month, I moved up to 5 days a week. And then after another month, I went to every day for a long time, for over a year. And so for me too, when I committed to it, I said, I'm going to do this for 18 months. Then I'll make a judgment on whether it works or not. I got my first paying client within 6 weeks on LinkedIn, and I was hooked. So that was part of what drove it for me. I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. It works. And so that's why I bumped it up to every day. And so I would just say, bite off something you can chew, but you just got to be consistent about it because it is a sort of a compounding type activity. It takes a while, really. I mean, you might get lucky and just hit it immediately, but it takes a while. And the LinkedIn algorithm is designed not to go viral. Unlike a lot of the other platforms, it is designed not to go viral. So, your expectations should be a little bit lower too. In terms of best practice, definitely everybody, all the experts say no more than once a day. It's really sort of like 18 hours, but once a day. Because apparently, if you do it more than that, your posts will cannibalize each other and they won't run as well. So you need to give it space to run. So again, it's sort of like, what can you handle? And a lot of people, when they start out, they're like, I don't know what to post about. But once you start posting more, the ideas will come. So Ron, what are your thoughts on that?
It was a consistency thing. I knew I had to develop the habit. So I started at, every business day. I then started bleeding into the weekends because I felt there was an opportunity because there wasn't as much activity on the weekend. So like there was a period of time where the Saturday, Sunday posts were really getting extended reach because the feed was hungry it was thirsty for more content and there wasn't as much activity and people contributing. But after doing it for as long as I've done it now, I ebb and flow a little bit more, right? I think that there are pros and cons to posting multiple times a day, right? It depends upon your audience and what you are posting. I think there's opportunities where I've seen some accounts that they will get less reach on each individual post if they do that, but in aggregate, it tends to be more than their average single post. I also try not to pander to the algorithm. Like if I'm going to post at whatever time, I tend to post early in the morning. Yeah, a lot of people say that that's the best time to post. It's just when I'm available to do it, right? Like I try to get up early before the kids are awake. I get a little bit of quiet. I can write it. I can get it out. And then during the day, I've got a team and clients and calls to jump on. And throughout, I'm just trying to respond to, anybody that's asked questions or jumped into the comment thread. So agree with pretty much the approach that you took, Jonathan. It was just something that I had to do to create the habit. And I've landed on that and I keep doing it and I enjoy it.
All right. So here's another question. This is more personal injury, but it can probably apply to some other practice areas too. But do you have any thoughts on any off the beaten track efforts worth exploring where the big advertisers really can't go or don't go?
I would say the ones that they're more hesitant to go into is like grassroots community involvement, right? Like getting involved with the local community, whether you are sponsoring events, local 5Ks, the turkey trot, fraternal order of police, the fire department, like getting involved and getting your name out there, and then showing that you want to support these local businesses. Like that's all brand building brand awareness. It's like marketing 101 stuff. Know, like, and trust. They remember you, they remember your name, and hopefully in the event that someone needs a service that you offer, you're top of mind. Some of the big national firms that then hop into new states and new markets and come with aggressive like radio, TV, billboard campaigns, they will outspend you. They will get better economics on all of their average cost pers, whether it's clicks or the amount that they're willing to spend on LSAs. So many of them are not willing to jump into those trenches, and they just don't have the long lasting history of being involved. Like some firms have grown up in their market, right? They know the local mom and pop shop. Like they have relationships that are so deep rooted in a big national firm that's attempting to come in and take up market share. Like you've got decades on them. So to be able to do that is one as a way to get around the big spenders is one of the things that you can kind of do to put yourself in a better position to play a game that they're not as willing to play.
So here's the problem that I struggle with, I'll say. So, like we said, there's so many things we can do to market, just tens. I mean, I can think of like 30 right now. And, they're all shiny. They look great. And I'm like, I'm going to do all of them at once. I'm going to do this one, this one, this one. And then I find that I don't do any of them very well. And then I lose enthusiasm, and then it just sort of goes away. So for somebody like me that, you've got all these options and you're looking to start, maybe you're doing a few things. What would be your recommendation or advice on sort of how to approach building this multi-layer ecosystem for your firm?
Boiling the ocean or attempting to do so is one of the fastest ways that you will not see success, because to your point, like, you will spread yourself too thin. You'll do everything that's kind of at a mediocre level. You won't be able to like understand how that platform or channel really works, because you're not going to collect enough data that is like statistically relevant in order for you to make a data-backed decision. So I would say the way that I've made it work for my business is I started with one channel. Granted, I did have a reputation. I've been in the space for a decade and a half, so people knew who I was and kind of what I did. Maybe not necessarily how I did it, but I dove into LinkedIn, right? And I consistently posted about that. And then over time, I introduced my newsletter. And then I started to build upon that with like the clips from being on podcasts and going into YouTube. And I'm in the nascent stages of doing that, but I want to take a very thoughtful and strategic approach to how I spend and allocate my time in marketing the business. So the same thing would happen if the firm says, I want to be on Facebook and then Twitter and then Instagram and now TikTok, but TikTok no more. I'm going to go to Threads and then Blue Sky. And it's like, there are just not enough hours in the day for you to do all of those things and make the impact that you want to do. So pick one, kind of understand the channel, stay in that lane, take the lessons that you've learned and try to apply those lessons to additional channels to increase your exposure or awareness in that way.
And I will say, we've probably all experienced this, but when you figure one out, you keep it going, and then you add another one, and then you add another one, they sort of amplify each other. It's sort of a multiplier effect. The sum is greater than the parts, at least I've found. So, that's something there. So here's another issue that I'm sure you hear a lot. Lawyers come to you, I need more leads, I need more leads, I need more leads. But when you look under the hood, they're not answering the phone. They're not calling the people back. They're letting the leads slip. So what would be your advice to the firms that are out there saying, hey, we want to go generate more? What do you look at first? Your intake, making sure you take care of it, or do you spend the money, or is it a holistic thing? You do both at once?
You do not spend the money. You focus on service delivery, because if you're just going to pour gasoline on that fire where you have more and more people coming in having a poor experience, and then they go back out and they tell their friends, family, and colleagues about how terrible it was, every additional dollar that you throw into that channel is just investing in first poor impressions at scale. There's no point if you're missing 20% of your phone calls, you don't need more leads. Period. Now, I'm not saying all 20% of those are going to be qualified opportunities, but there is a portion of those that are opportunities that are slipping through the cracks. You've got a leaky funnel. So you figure out what's happening with our phone coverage. Do we need overage, after hours, weekend support? Is there a technology problem? Are for whatever reason, our forms going to spam? Are they not getting to the intake director for whatever reason? Is a phone number, is a phone down? Is call rail or call tracking, or is our VoIP not working? Like, you investigate those things, you identify whether it's a people, a process, or a technology issue. And if all those things are in lock and everything is running smoothly as it should, then you can consider investing or being more aggressive in a particular channel, or try to work with your partners to get an understanding as to why things may not be working as you had expected. Maybe you've got a bunch of new competition that entered into your market. Happens all the time with LSAs. LSAs are so volatile because people are jumping in and out of the market because they don't think it works or they want to manage it themselves, right? Like, there are certain things that you can do, very limited compared to like paid search or Google Ads, but there are things that you can do to figure out, like, well, what's happening here? And then that's how you address it.
So we're getting close to the end of the time here. If anybody has a question, pop it in real quick. While we're waiting on that. So let's talk Google reviews real quick. You know, forever people said that's the holy grail of showing up in Google searches. There's been a big issue with the fake reviews and the paid for reviews. You know, maybe talk us through a little bit about the current state of Google reviews and what people should be thinking about.
Well, we'll see what happens with the FTC's updated regulations around whether or not they're going to go and make an example out of any firms that I believe it's blatantly obvious that they are just purchasing fake social engagement, whether it's on followers or likes on social, or just generating fake positive reviews. I think the hammer will be brought down on someone. They'll be made an example of, but I don't think it's going to solve the entire issue that's run rampant across the industry. Whatever you can do at multiple stages of that consumer's experience to ask for a review, whether they're saying thank you or they're grateful, you're handing them a check, they referred you another client, to try to generate as many of those reviews as you can. It will help you improve your local visibility, within the maps. And they're also a big driver for local services ads. And it's social proof. People go and check it out when they're doing their due diligence. What is the good, bad, and ugly that people have to say about this? So.
All right, we got one more question. I think this will be the last one. So qualifying leads is a major challenge. Seems to take a big investment to do well. Do you think it's worth the time, effort, expense to get a detailed picture of lead quality, practice area, et cetera, say for a 25 attorney firm with multiple practice areas?
If you've got the tools in place to be able to do that, right? Like, for example, CallRail, and man, this is like an advertising for CallRail and what converts this call, but they offer a feature known as conversational intelligence, which essentially will take that call recording and highlight certain phrases or sayings that have occurred during the intake call. And you can tag that with specific terms, or like identify those leads in a certain way that will give you the opportunity to listen to those calls, see whether or not it is a lead quality issue or if it's an intake issue. Now, I mean, your question here is to get a detailed picture of lead quality. Like, that is important to create that feedback loop to get it back to the agency or whomever is responsible for marketing you in channel, so that they can pull levers and make adjustments. That's very important, like keeping those lines of communication open. So if it's a 25 attorney firm and you are investing, some significant dollars into that, I do think it's worth the time investment.
And also, just from my perspective, I want to know, I get some bad leads, non-qualified leads. I want to figure that out too, because if I'm getting too many of those, something's wrong with my message somewhere, and I want to try to figure that out. And if I don't track it, I'm not sure I'll figure that out. So, well, cool guys, we're at the end, and I appreciate everybody sticking around. So Ron, thanks for joining us, everybody. Ron is actually my fractional CMO. So thanks, Ron, for all the help you give me. But for people out there that may want to find you, what's the best way to find you?
LegalFenix.com. That's FENIX, LegalFenix. And I'm on LinkedIn sharing content just like you are every day. So check it out. Got YouTube, newsletter, sign up, and you can get some more actionable insights and tips.
And if you're looking for me, lawfirmgc.com or LinkedIn, that's a good spot. Although lately I hadn't been posting as much. So anyway, enjoyed it, everybody. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Jonathan.